Hello, day 19 of the Crafty Black Sheep Advent 2020. Today we are going to knit my cousin Sadie's Christmas boot. I showed some pictures of this on Instagram, and one of the gals that I know says, "Hey, that looks just like the stock boots that my mom made in the 70s," and I'm pretty sure that that's exactly what this is. But where is that pattern? I don't know. So when I first opened the shop, I don't know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, my cousin Jane, who, if you like caught up with the family, my grandmother was Sadie's sister, and so my cousin Jane is my mom and my aunt's cousin, first cousin. She sent me a bunch of knitting supplies and some ornaments and some things that were her mother's. And this was in the box of goodies, this little boot. So of course, Thursday night, I decided that it was time to take it apart and try and figure out the pattern, which after a few struggles, I did. In fact, I'll show you the iterations. Essentially what this is very much like a baby booty. And I don't know if you've seen those baby booties that you knit flat and then pick up stitches on the toe. This, my first iteration, looks very much like one of those baby booties. It'd be super cute to make some baby booties that look like Santa shoes, wouldn't it? So I've tucked that away for like future reference. But that tip down toe, a little too wide across the top of the foot, and it was a little too wide. So that was iteration number 1. I wrote all the instructions down that I did as I did it, and then promptly said, well, that's not going to work. And then iteration number 2, let's see if I can have a look for iteration number 2. This is iteration number 2. This is iteration number 2. I figured out that the how to do the bow definitely in a more efficient way. So there's the bow at the back of the heel. But I had a few loose stitches up here at the arch. And I decided that my aunt had did a little fewer stitches across the top of the foot. So then iteration number 3, I feel like I've kind of hit as close as I'm going to get. It's got a little bit of an arch at the bottom, but I think that's more to do with the fact that this has an arch, but I think my curve has more to do with the fact that I'm working with cotton instead of acrylic than anything else. So this one I called Good Enough. I do think on a tree it's definitely going to look Santa booty. And so there we go. I have this pattern written down, and I'm going to share it with you tonight. What I used for this is 2 skeins of 4-ply or fingering weight Mian Cotton. One is in, I always have to look at the labels, Crimson Kiss. The other is in Line Dried Sheets. So those are the 2 colors I used for this pattern. And then I personally like to use just 6-inch double points. I think these might be, are these 6 or 8? These could be 8-inch double points. But I like to use double pointed needles to work on when I'm working on something small like this, just because I don't need a big long straight needle. I don't need a circular needle with a whole bunch of wire in my way. And these sort of give me a stealthy way to work back and forth. The cast on for this is 26, and the double pointed needles are size 2 or 3 around in there. So the cast on is 26 stitches. My technique for a cast on is I cast on 1 inch. For every cast on I cast on, for every asked for cast on number, so this is 26, I pull out 1 inch. When it's a fingering weight, I err on the smaller side. If it's anything worsted weight, then I err on the larger side. So for 26, I would do 36 if I were working out of a worsted weight. And for this, I work down. I do a little bit shorter than what I estimate to be 26. Now, having a little bit of tail left on this is fine, because the tail on this cast on is going to ultimately become our bow. So the more tail I have left over, the more I've got looping room to make a fluffy bow. It's the when I switch colors, that tail will be what I end up using for the cuff seam. And I'm just doing a long tail cast on here. So the cuff is knit in garter stitch. And what we'll do is 12 rows of garter stitch before we transition to the red yarn. Two, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 23, 26. Got a couple extra in there. Now it did occur to me that this would make, and see I've got a bit of a tail, plenty to make a little needle popped away, to make a bow when I'm done. Now the one risk of having a long tail is that you end up working your first row with it. Be careful and don't do that. In my first row, because it's easier, I knit through the back loop on my first run across my needle, just so that it's just easier, and it doesn't affect the look any, and it doesn't affect it makes the second row just as easy to knit. So I just do that to make my life easier. All right, so I've just reached row 10 on the red section, or in total that would be row 22. The next thing I'm going to do is do a couple of decreases right here in the middle to bring down the top of the instep of the sock. So I'm going to knit 10. I'm going to slip, slip, knit. Make sure I'm doing this right. I'm going to knit 3, 1, 2, 3. Going to knit 2 together, and then I'm going to knit to the end of the row. 1, 2, 3. All right, and then purl back. All right, now we're going to get ready for the instep, and that means that I'm going to knit 14 across and then turn. So this is the side of the boot to the first hem. And right now it becomes rather important, especially since we're working with cotton, that I try to really be tight here, because this is going to be susceptible to gaps when I pick up the stitches along the sides. 6, 8, 9, 10, and then here's the instep. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to turn because I'm about to do short rows on these 4 stitches. And there will be 11-ish rows of these short rows. So there's the first, 2, 3, 4, right, just 2 more rows because I want to, no, 1 more row. 1 more row. So yes, it was 11 rows. Alright, now I'm going to pick up stitches along the side here, 6 of them in fact. And you can do this with a crochet hook, or you can kind of struggle along with your needle. I'm going to go 1 single thread every other row, in every other row, starting with the one closest to the stitch I'm on. So there's 1, 2, and I've got to say it's easier on this row than it is on the other side of this instep. So we have 4, 5, and 6. Ooh, and that looks like it's going to form a hole. So one of the ways I do this is I'm going to go through 2 threads this time, pick that up, and I'm also going to twist that stitch on my needle. So put a ring in it. It'll still make a little hole, but it won't make a big difference. And then knit across the remaining 10 stitches that have been on rest. And then purl back to the other side of the instep where we're going to pick up stitches again. I also want to add that we're also going to increase along that gusset, so we're going to purl back up until we hit the stitch right before the tip of the instep, or that center 4 set of short rows we did. So we have 10 and then 6, so it should be 16 stitches. And it will be here. Alright, there, 16 stitches. Now I'm going to make one left. So I'm going to take the collar that's underneath the next stitch and grab it and twist it and put it on the needle, and then I'm going to knit through the back loop. Or actually I'm going to purl. Because we're in a purl section. And then I'm going to purl the 4 that are still sitting on the needle from the top of the foot. And then I'm going to make another stitch right here. So I'm going to make one right. I'm going to pull from the collar around the previous stitch and then purl. And purl. Alright, now it's time to pick up the next set of stitches. I cannot pick them up from the back, otherwise I'll end up with a ridge on my instep. So I'm going to have to turn my work, and this gets a little awkward, but I'm going to pick up 6 stitches along the side here. And this is, I'm left-handed, so that could have a little bit to do with my issues here. If ever there was a time that you pulled out your crochet hook, it would be, for me, this spot. Pull that one up. I do like a little twist, and at this point when it gets difficult. Alright, I think I have 4 picked up, so I need 2 more. 1, there, and then the last one. And again, through 2, just to keep that closed, and then we're going to give it a twist on the needle. There. Alright, I've picked those up, and we're going to finish purling, so turn my work back around, and let's purl. Now, I have risked a hole in this turn here, so I'm going to make sure that these are really tight as I progress on. If you have trouble with the first stitch of your row coming loose, knit 2 stitches, give it a tug, knit 1 more stitch, give it another tug, and then that'll help lock it in place. All right, from here on out, we're just going to work on the bottom half of the boot. We've now formed the instep. All right, so what remains is to knit across and purl back once to get some distance on the bottom of that boot. There's the 4 across the tip of the boot, or the instep, and then up the other side. And again, we're in the place where you want to be, you want to tighten your work if you can. Purl once. Purl back. See, we've got this funny little nose dip there, or it almost looks like a cod piece, but it is going to be, it will turn into a foot presently. Purl back. Now we are going to do a decrease under the bottom of the foot, just to give a little shape to that toe piece, and bring in the heel. So the heel kind of dips in at the back, so this will be the row to do that. So knit 1, slip, slip, knit, knit across to the last stitch. Last 3 stitches, knit 2 together, and knit 1. All right, we're gonna purl back, knit across, purl back one more time, and then bind off. So we're in the last stretch here. row. We'll bind off and then we'll be ready to seam. It's important to bind up loosely here to keep your boot from curling up underneath. So, loose hand. Oh, and purlwise, or not purlwise, let's bind off knitwise. So, knit on this last row, even though you normally would be purling. We'll knit and bind off. Makes the seaming look a little bit better along that bottom. Alright, cut a decent 12 inches of ending here. Even if you don't need all of it for the seaming process, it gives you plenty to hide your ends and also to use scraps for a bow later. Alright, so upper portion of our boot we have here, and then here is the bottom of the boot. And I'm going to seam along here first. I'm using my darning needle. Actually, this is the chenille, it's the sharp kind. And I definitely like the sharp kind when I'm working with cotton, because this is not gonna felt to itself, but on the other hand, it will help me make a somewhat hidden ending. All right, I'm gonna do a figure 8. So we're gonna go in here, and then I'm gonna pull this closed, and then I'm gonna wrap my yarn over and under, just to secure that edge. And then along the bottom, I'm going to go on the 2 rows. So I'm going to stitch this row of the knit stitch to that row of the knit stitch. It will give me a bit of a bottom foundation instead of hiding it and looking just like there is a single stockinette stitch there. It will give me sort of an X pattern there, and then back across, and then back across, just like that. But I'm trying to give this boot just a little bit of a sole. There, see that? Just gives a little hint of a bottom of the shoe. theoretically you could make this bigger or have a bigger yarn and it would come out big enough to like hold a gift card. It's always good for that. I'm just using them, as you will see at the end of the video, on a little metallic Christmas tree that I have in my entryway. If you see from the beginning of the video, that is my second metallic tree. I happened to buy these, well, I think at Wayfair actually. I bought these at Wayfair and they came in a 2-pack. So it's like, all right, I gotta figure out something to do with the second one, even though I only wanted one. And last year it was in my bathroom. This year it's got pride of place in the living room. I'm going to do a little back stitch and catch the yarn so that I split it and sort of make an invisible knot. And then I'm going to do that a second time there, and then send it up inside the work and then come out and clip it short. So there will be a tail, but that tail will be inside the boot. And then this is a scrap I can use for a bow. Alright, so the heel is done, or the sole of the boot is done. And there we have the sole of the boot. The next step I'm going to complete is to take the white and stitch up the cuff. I'm also going to use this opportunity to fill in any or hide any loose places that occurred when I joined the red to the white. If I have to do a little loopy stitch, I'll do that. Alright, so now my goal, see how the cast on's on this side? My goal is to end on that side. I'm going to, because this is garter stitch, I'm going to stitch up in the space between the garters and up into a garter and then across. There. And then into a garter and into the space between the garters and back over. Into the space and up into a garter and back over. Into the garter, down into the space, back over. Trying to, as best I can, line up the garter stitches into stripes. And definitely there are more finessing ways to do this, but this is a little Christmas ornament. I'm not going to worry too much about it. There. Alright, now, these have both ended up on both sides, on the same side, so I'm going to run this over to the other side because we're going to use this to, there's the little back of the heel. We're going to use this to secure both to make a hanger and to secure the bow that's going to come along later. Alright, now I just have one remaining piece of end left, and I've got the back of the foot. And this happens to be joining two pieces of stockinette. This one will be, for me anyway, is pretty satisfying to stitch, but it also requires that I roll this in. So we have a stockinette stitch here, and it looks like a pretty good one there. So I'm going to join these, which means rolling some in. I'm going to go to the outside stockinette to an outside stockinette stitch. So again, my figure 8, I'm going to go to that one. So see, you can see that ridge? We're going to go to the ones that are furthest away from us. There. And then we're going to go over here to that one that's away from us. And then down. And across to the one that is furthest away. There. And down to the next level. And across. Just trying to make this look like a bit of a knit stitch that's down this and not a seam. And it does mean that there'll be some edges on the inside like I did sew a seam. But again, it's going to decorate a tree. It's not important whether I've got a bit of a seam there or not. This is exactly how I sew up a sweater. So this is good practice for joining pieces of a sweater together. almost to the edge, so I'm being a little more careful about what I'm looking at and to get those edges tucked in. So I've got to get this heel to go in. There. Sort of gather around that edge and tuck it in. There. There's my edge, my end. You see a little bit of a seam, but not horrible. And then I'm going to do a little back stitch like I did before to secure this yarn. And this time, because I have just like a little wedgie sticking out of this heel, I'm going to stitch over to that and use this yarn in my hand to sort of pull it in a little. So, it'll come out the heel, give it a little tug, back stitch. Let's see if I can pull that heel in just the tiniest bit. Hide the ends inside the sock. And pull tightly. All right, there, that went in much better. Okay, there's the boot. Definitely this one could benefit from a block. Here are my ends. There's my boot, and I have 2 scraps of red left, and I'm going to trim my tail on this. So I want this to be about this long to hang on the tree, just a few inches, and I'm going to trim these tails off and then use the scraps, just one, to make a bow. So I have 2 reds and a white, and I'm going to wrap it around just 2 or 3 fingers, I guess 2 fingers, and lay that down inside of, oh, shouldn't have tied that quite yet. Lay that down inside of these 2, and then positioning it so it's about halfway on either side. And then I'm going to tie a surgeon's knot. So wrap twice, pull as tight as you can, and then again wrap twice inside the knot, pull, and then let's tie the top. Now this has gotten a little shorter because I shouldn't have tied it quite as quickly as I did. But there we go. There. And I've got my little bow. I'm going to trim my little ends just so they're even. There. We have Santa's boot. And I'll go hang that on the tree along with the other 5 that you've already seen on there, or that you will soon see on there. All right, that's it for tonight. I hope you have a good Advent and that you're carrying on with a good Advent. We've just got about a week left, so enjoy.
Then you know it's Christmas, when the snow starts to fall. Then you know it's Christmas for the children above all. Then you know it's Christmas, 'cause Santa's on his way. We'll stand under the mistletoe, and then it's Christmas Day. The joyful times we witness forever stays with us. Soon Rudolph hears his whistle and gathers all